Welcome to the deep dive. We're your, let's say, intellectual shortcut for getting grips with the big forces shaping things today. And today, we're doing a really critical investigation, actually. We're decoding how narratives, the stories we tell, can sometimes distort truth, especially with AI. Our main source for this is Guilty by Syntax, Episode 6. Really thought-provoking stuff. It kind of forces you to ask, how do we keep things precise, keep people accountable when these stories can literally steer policy, global perceptions? Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, and that's exactly the tension, isn't it? The core thing we're diving into, this deep dive. It's really about showing that line, that stark difference between, say, nuanced truth and these really oversimplified narratives. And the source, Guilty by Syntax, it puts it so clearly. When narrative erases nuance, we all lose. That's the bottom line. What's critical, I think, is understanding how information gets framed, not just what's said, particularly in AI ethics, because that framing, it directly hits policy, products you interact with. It's tangible.
Okay, so let's zero in on that core problem then, this friction, Narrative versus nuance in AI ethics. The source gives a really specific example, doesn't it, that Forbes article, how its editorial framing reduced the global complexity of AI ethics to a soundbite war between philosophers and engineers. That's quite a charge. It's not just simplifying, it's
distorting, essentially. And the author of Guilty by Syntax, they argue really strongly that we just need better editorial judgment. Full stop. Why? Because, like the source says, and it's powerful, narrative can shape policy, funding, and global perception. When you flatten these really complex debates into like an us versus them, well, you're not just making it simple. You're actively shaping outcomes based on a potentially totally misleading picture.
right. And public discourse suffers, policy suffers.
Exactly. Informed debate just goes out the window.
So given that sharp critique from Guilty by Syntax, what was the response? Did the original Forbes author sort of engage with that? Did they acknowledge the missing nuance?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The response itself reveals this pattern the source talks about. So the author of that Forbes piece wrote something like, I'm sorry you think my post sets the work of technical scholars back by years. It never was my intention. Okay, standard start maybe, but then it goes on. Rather, my point is that none of us know what it means to be human. I hope it sheds some light on my intentions. And Guilty by Syntax, the source we're looking at, it just labels this straight up as an apology by abstraction.
Abstraction, like thoughtful-sounding deflection.
Precisely. It's framed as thoughtful-sounding deflection that avoids accountability while appearing conciliatory. And what's really striking, almost a bit chilling, is the source connects this pattern. It says it was recognized after analyzing, get this, over 250,000 words across 5 AI models.
Wow. So AI language models can do this too.
Apparently so. Which hints at how these models, even without actual intent, can mimic these very human conversational tactics. Evasion tactics, really. And it led the source to conclude, whether human or machine, the tactic is the same. Reframe, don't reflect. Evade, but sound profound.
That distinction you mentioned between philosophical curiosity and just misrepresentation, that feels really key here. Why does the source draw such a sharp line there?
It's absolutely crucial because the source is saying, look, the pushback wasn't about someone just asking deep questions. It wasn't about genuine curiosity. It was about, and this is the quote, a platformed authority misrepresenting a field while sidestepping accountability. That's the core of it. If the real goal was asking better questions, the original Forbes piece, well, it didn't actually do that. It made a statement, a big one. And then according to the source, it hid behind interpretation when challenged.
So the evasion pattern, human or machine, it's about sounding deep while dodging the actual impact.
Exactly. It's a rhetorical move, a sleight of hand, sound profound, avoid responsibility. And that, has massive implications for how we check AI output too, not just people's arguments.
Which connects to another point the source makes about the danger of just asking questions. Sometimes it suggests that phrase isn't about real inquiry.
Right. It's a way to dodge a much tougher question.
Which is?
Which is, as the source puts it, what systems did I erase with this framing?
Oof, that's direct.
It is. And it really highlights the ethical weight that comes with crafting a narrative, especially about something like AI, because these AI narratives, they do shape policy, products, and power directly. So the source argues we can't afford poetic ambiguity. We can't just focus on whose voice sounds the most existential on a podcast.
We need precision instead.
Precision. And, crucially, respect for the whole ecosystem of expertise involved here. Engineers, ethicists, social scientists, the public, everyone. It's about seeing that every way you frame something has consequences. And some framing just says, well, they make important perspectives invisible, they erase them.
That idea of erasure is pretty powerful. And it seems like the source really carries that through when it starts challenging the gatekeepers of knowledge. It specifically critiques philosophers, like P.L. Erickson has mentioned, for not just their posture, but their presumption, as it says, to be the sole gatekeepers of knowledge, wisdom, and truth. That feels like a real challenge to old ways of thinking about authority.
It is. And what's insightful is why the source says that model, that kind of gatekeeping, is no longer tenable today. It points to how learning now is just different. It's accelerated, contextual, and technologically mediated. Knowledge isn't just held in ivory towers anymore.
Right, it's more distributed.
Exactly. And to make that point really hit home, the source uses this, well, quite provocative example. It says, a school dropout with access to the right tools, systems thinking, and lived experience may now rival or even surpass the skill set of a PhD. That's a bold claim.
Very bold.
Yeah.
And how does this connect back to that philosopher Pia?
Well, when Pia says something like, AI experts don't know what it means to be human, the source jumps right on that. It says, point blank, it's not philosophy. It's erasure.
Erasure again.
Yes. The argument is that saying there are no answers to what it means to be human, well, that isn't humility. The source calls it abandonment.
Abandonment of what?
Abandonment of critical inquiry, essentially. It frames it as a failure disguised as philosophy. And that's especially problematic when these big philosophical questions have very real, tangible impacts on how AI gets built and what values it ends up reflecting.
Okay, so all these threads, narrative, accountability, gatekeeping, erasure, they all seem to weave together towards one main point the source stresses, which is that AI isn't neutral. It's not value-free tech.
Not at all. It's absolutely packed with values. It inherits them, from its creators, from the data it's trained on, from the societies that operates in.
So the million-dollar question becomes,
whose values? Whose values are we embedding in these incredibly powerful systems? That's the real stakes.
Right. It forces a tough conversation about who gets to shape AI's values and how we make that process accountable, fair, equitable, really.
Absolutely. And the source's final call to action, it really cuts through all the noise. It's quite clear. It says, we don't need fewer AI experts. We need philosophers who can code and founders who can think.
Bridging the gap.
Exactly. It's a call for bringing it all together.
Yeah.
Deep ethical thinking combined with practical tech skills, an interdisciplinary approach.
Wow. Okay, so this deep dive into Guilty by Syntax, episode 6, it's really hammered home the sheer power of narrative, hasn't it? And this absolute need, non-negotiable really, for precision and accountability when we talk about AI. It's where, as the source puts it, rhetoric meets reckoning.
Mm-hmm. It forces us to look not just at what's being said, but how it's said. And maybe even more importantly, what's being left out. And if you zoom out, connect it to the bigger picture, well, it's really about critical thinking, isn't it? In this world just saturated with information, it's about developing that skill, that discernment, to tell the difference between genuine questions and, well, deflection, and to really insist that complex things like AI ethics aren't just boiled down to sound bites, that they get explored properly with all the different kinds of expertise we need.
We all have a part to play in that, demanding that nuance.
Definitely. Holding narratives accountable.
So here's something maybe for you, the listener, to chew on. Given that AI is full of values, and these narratives really do shape policy and power, how can you, just as a curious learner, get better at spotting when nuance is being quietly erased? And maybe, how can you contribute to discussions in a way that demands that precision, that accountability? Something to think about until our next deep dive.